Welcome, everyone, back to another episode of Afterwords, in a podcast about all things TEDx and what it means to stand on that red dot and be a speaker and everything surrounding that process. I'm your host, Michael Ashford. I am the head speaker coach at TEDxManitouSprings and a two-time TEDx speaker myself. And we're getting the hang of these things already with guest number 2. This is Vivian Cobb. Vivian, you have also been a speaker coach at an event before, but you've also been on the stage. So welcome to Afterwords.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here. Yeah.
So I like to kick off these episodes, and we're only 2 in, so it's just now becoming a pattern. But I like to kick off these episodes by asking you, what is inspiring you right now, Vivian?
Right now, I am being inspired by, I am about to sell my house and become a nomad.
Oh my.
And that is inspiring me like you would not believe. I am so excited. I feel like the weight of the world has been lifted off of me, and I'm going to be unencumbered, and I'm going to be able to do whatever I want to do. And oh my God, I just cannot wait.
I'm sure people have so many questions about that. I have a lot of questions about that, but this is a TEDx show.
I might do a TEDx talk about that one
there
day.
You go.
You never know.
Your next TEDx idea. So, Vivian, I would just love to understand from you, why TEDx? Why did you want to step on the red dot? Why? Yeah, what went into the movement forward and saying, this is something that I want to do for my life?
I know, right? It's such a thing. My really good friend, Angela, which I know you know her as well. She's involved sometimes.
She was my first speaker coach.
There you go. Yeah. Well, she did a TEDx talk back in the day. I think it was 2018 or 17, like that. And that was the first time I had ever heard of TEDx. And I thought, wow, she's so cool. And she got to do that. And then I thought, wow, I'm pretty cool. I think I'm going to do that too. So yeah, I was inspired by her. And so that became a dream of mine. And I visualized it. The first time I was a TEDx coach was for TEDx Colorado Springs. And I took a picture of me on that red dot and I put it on my visualization board, and sure enough, it happened. Not once, but twice.
Yeah. What was it about Angela's talk or just seeing that process from your friend that inspired you? What was it that kind of got to you at a deeper level?
The fact that she was brave and courageous and got up and told her story, and I wanted to do the same. I wanted to tell my story.
Yeah.
And I was inspired by that. And it was just the perfect opportunity and venue for that. And to be able to speak from my heart and tell the truth and hopefully really affect other people's lives. I mean, I think that's why we do it. We want to put ourselves out there so that perhaps somebody out there will see our story and go, oh, wow, I'm not alone. And that's really important.
I think anybody that's watched Vivian, your talk that's out there on YouTube right now, would the word that would come to mind is you were incredibly vulnerable.
I was.
You were very, very open about some deep stuff that had happened within your life. Mm-hmm. And to the person listening or watching right now who may be experiencing that, I think their first question would be, okay, but most of us don't want to step on a stage and tell that story, that deep hurt or that deep trauma or that deep thing that we care about. So how did you get over that? How did you get over that?
Like, sure
I don't know if I want to go public with this.
I'm not sure I'm over it. No, the thing of that whole experience was unbelievable. And I really think it's part of why I'm doing what I'm doing today and why I'm talking about the subject that I'm talking about today. I'm actually going back around to the first thing I wanted to talk about after my husband died and left me with a house in foreclosure and no money in the bank. And I was in so much pain around that for so long that I couldn't talk about it. And now that's what I'm talking about to help other women not experience that very tragic outcome of not talking about finances in a relationship. The fact that I came out with the talk that I came out with a year ago and telling the truth, my absolute deepest, darkest truth, still still very, very vulnerable, like you said, very hard. Not hard in a bad way, but that has helped me absolutely forgive like I never knew I could forgive, look at my life like I never thought I could look at my life, and just really be authentically. I mean, I've always been authentically myself, but man, now it's just no holes barred, and it is the most freeing, incredible experience. And a lot of that talk I know was for me, but it was also for other people. And I had never talked about that publicly. The people in the room who saw me practice were the only people who knew that until I stood on that stage. And the reason I wanted to do it that way was I wanted to model for other people that you can do it. You can open yourself up to that degree, and it doesn't kill you. In fact, it endeared people to me, and it made them love me more and see me more, and I wanted to share that. And so that's why I did it. And you're right, most people can't do it, but they saw somebody who could, so maybe that gets them a little bit closer.
You know, already there's a theme coming out in a lot of the speakers that we've talked with, that we will have on this show, that we have on this show, of they're not giving their talk just to say, hey, look at me. I want to be on this stage, and I mean, of course there's some desire to give a TEDx talk, but there's this drive to want to help people. Now I got to take a step back and just ask you a very pointed, simple question of why? Why do you want to do that?
Because I believe this world needs a lot of help right now. We need to be connected in ways we've never been connected before. I think our survival depends on it. I mean, that's a deep statement, and I'm just going to let that sit because it's true. If we can't get back to our humanity and our connection and the things that make us human and special to each other, then we're lost forever. And
what is it all for?
Exactly. And so
Right.
I want to model that, and I want to be courageous in that so that other people can be courageous in that as well.
Now, you mentioned something earlier, that this talk kind of spurred you on to do some other things afterwards. You certainly mentioned the feedback that you've received, but dive into that a little bit more. Like, what did giving this talk, what did standing on the red dot do for you and propel you towards?
Well, first of all, the preparation for this talk was excruciating.
It's intense, isn't it?
Oh my God. Especially when you're doing something that is so personal and so deep and vulnerable, as you called it. Just that process alone was, I mean, there were times I had to call Mickey and just in a complete meltdown and like, oh my God. And I would tell her, I'd say, don't worry, I promise I'll be there, but you have to know that this is really hard for me. And she was so supportive and so sweet and so caring. And I love her for that. So once I got past that process, getting to, it really helped me to being that vulnerable and that honest in that little piece of myself that I kept hidden so thoroughly for my entire life. And once that was exposed, then it was like, oh, well, bring whatever else you got, because that was the worst that I had, And so it just opened me up to looking at life so differently. And like I said, that has just fed into, I mean, it took me out for a while, even afterward. And it's kind of like when you work really hard towards something, and you're just like so focused on it, and then it's done, and then you're kind of like, oh, now what?
You've heard that from Olympians.
Yes.
Like, they work so long and so intensely and so hard to achieve this one thing every 4 years, and then once it's done, they're like, okay.
Yeah, and so it took me about 6 months of just kind of going around going, wow, that was like the pinnacle. What do I do now, right? But once all that cleared away, I've been so much more free. And I think that, like I said earlier, has helped me say, wait a minute, I don't want to be encumbered by a big, huge house. I want to go travel. I want to go speak all over the world. I want to meet new people and do new things. And this house is really holding me down. It's sucking up all my money. And it's, it's this responsibility that I don't need anymore and I don't want anymore. And so it just kind of opened these doors to this little place inside of me that wants to go out and play and just be free.
I'm having visions of Tom Hanks in the Money Pit in that movie right now.
I think all
a house can sometimes feel like that. Sometimes.
Yes.
Okay. The question everyone's going to want to know: where are you going to live? Will you live in a tent, or will you live in a?
Well, it's interesting. I've priced out some campers, and I've thought about. I've thought about that, but then I thought, that's not really me. I love to drive. Don't get me wrong. I love a road trip, but I kind of like a hot shower and not going to the bathroom in a little can or whatever. So I'm gonna probably do the Airbnb thing.
Okay.
What I really want to do, I'm committed to being here through 23, but January 24, I'm gonna go overseas again. I was overseas at the end of last year. And I want to spend 2 to 3 months in each country that I visit and really immerse myself in the culture, stay away from the touristy stuff, really try and be around the locals. Yeah. That's more my vibe. And I want to do that for a year or two. But I have an Airbnb here. I do have another property that is a rental. So I do have a place to land when I come back. And I also know a lot of people here, and I've had a lot of friends say, "Oh, you can come stay with me." It's not usually more than a couple of weeks, but that's okay. It's like, no, you can't move in, but you can come stay. And that's fine. I really don't have a plan, and that's kind of the beauty of it.
There's some vulnerability in that for sure.
Yeah,
it's kind of
we're
been
just
the theme
gonna kind of go with the flow.
So I want to go back to something you said, that the process of creating the talk and preparing for the talk was just so intense. Mm-hmm. Give the folks who may be wanting to do this or considering this just a window. You've also been a coach before too. Mm-hmm. What is it that is so intense about this process? From in the preparation leading up to stepping on stage. Mm-hmm. What is just so intense about it? Well,
you have this idea, right? You have this idea. And it's this really broad idea, I want to tell everybody about cake. All right, well.
Who wouldn't want to hear that?
Yeah, but who wouldn't want to hear that? But you only have 20 minutes, and there's a lot of stuff about cake. So you have to, part of the process of just culling it down and making it make sense, flow, what is the point you're actually trying to make? What is the message? How do you say it so poignantly that it can't be missed? There's a lot of technical stuff you have to do, but also if it's a really personal story, you've got the emotional stuff. For me, I'm writing that story and I am reliving everything as I'm writing. And so I'm having to process that as I'm writing it. And that's where the difficulty emotionally came in. Yeah. Not difficulty, that's maybe not the right word, but just the fact that you have to look at it, process it, know that you're going to speak about it. But it's just, it's a long process, and you don't have a whole lot of time. I mean, you have a few months. It's probably more time than some talks that you might be involved in. Yeah. And you have a lot of help along the way, which is nice. You've got the coaching, you've got the mastermind to help you get that message focused. But I think part of it also is just the mind work of focusing, getting your idea down to what is it you actually want to say about cake. You know what I'm saying? So that it's exhausting in some ways, just like anything that's important.
As a coach, I tell the speakers that I'm working with that every line has to set up the next line. Mm-hmm. And if it doesn't, if it's filler, if it's not moving your narrative towards your end goal or your end point, get it out of there, because it can very quickly balloon into something that that becomes unmanageable. You forget things. It has to be so on point every single line.
Yeah,
and that
every word has to matter. Yeah.
And you're often not supported by slides either.
Right.
So bringing yourself back around by just taking a glance at some slides, that usually doesn't happen either. So there is a level of, and then the delivery of a TEDx talk, I think, can get into some people's heads. How did you go about thinking about how you wanted to deliver such an emotionally gripping part of your life?
Well, I knew I had to hold it together. And so there's a lot of work on that. Practice. I mean, I can't say enough about just saying it over and over and over and getting, and as a coach, you'll relate to this. If you get stuck on a line, that's usually a pain point that you either need to get rid of it or you need to analyze. Why am I getting stuck right here?
Yep.
I mean, there's all kinds of
been there.
Yeah, all kinds of stuff going on that's even beyond the words. You know, you've got your emotions, you've got your brain, your subconscious. All those kinds of things are all working together. But yeah, it's quite the process. It really is. But you're right. Every word has to count, and you got to get rid of the stuff that doesn't make any difference. Yeah. And I think the most important thing I can say about being a TEDx talker is you have to be coachable. You have to be open to feedback. And if somebody says, you know, this part really doesn't need to be in there, and even though you think it's the absolute best part of your speech, you have to be willing to say, okay, I need to be open about this and get rid of it, because the end game is for the audience to get the most out of what you're saying. Make it about your audience.
Absolutely. So I want to wrap things up here by asking you just a couple quick questions here, which the first of is I know we've kind of maybe scared some people here with some of this stuff. What was the most enjoyable part of it for you, Vivian?
Oh my gosh, it was really enjoyable, and I didn't mean to scare people.
I was being a little bit over the top.
But like you said, my talk in particular was really intense, but not everybody's is. So, and you don't have to go for your own jugular in a TEDx talk. You can pick something a little less intense in your life. But I'm sorry, go back to the question.
The most enjoyable part.
Oh, enjoyable part.
What did you get out of it?
Well, of course, community. You can't beat the community.
Absolutely.
The friendships. You're bonded to those people in a way that you're not going to be bonded with anyone else. Sharing that experience of being vulnerable and putting yourself out there and working together and giving each other feedback. That's a beautiful thing. And then, of course, I love being on a stage, delivering a message that affects an audience. That to me is very rewarding to my soul. And it was a beautiful venue to do that in. And people who show up for TEDx talks, they really want to be there.
Yeah.
They really want to hear these messages. And that is, that's the best.
You know, I was struck as you were saying that by the fact that you are there in the middle of a 6-foot diameter red dot, but you just spoke of how much support is in the background.
Oh, yeah.
You are not unsupported when you step on that stage by any stretch of the imagination. So just want to make that, draw that point out, because that's important for a lot of people.
A lot of people. Yeah, you're not just showing up that day for the first time in the middle of the red dot expected to deliver this incredible speech. No, there is a lot of behind the scenes, a lot of love and support that gets you to that red dot. And that's the magic of it all.
For the person thinking, okay, I'm convinced I want to do this, what would be your lasting advice to them to consider as they think about, okay, applying and preparing for a TEDx talk? Just what's your last piece of advice, Vivian?
Well, don't give up. It might not happen on the first time that you apply.
Very true.
It took me 6 or 7 times before I got in, and I applied all over the country. So don't give up. If you really have a message that is meaningful to you and that you want to share and that the world needs to hear, just keep plugging away at it. Get help. Find people who have done it before. Get their advice. Listen to their advice.
That's the coachable part.
That's the coachable part. But yeah, just do it. if you want to do it.
Go for it.
Yeah, go
Awesome.
for it.
Thank you so much, Vivian. Thanks for being vulnerable and sharing your perspective, and safe travels. All right.
Thank you. Thank you. It's so good to see you.